Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first Abington Finance Committee meeting of 2021. It is January 6th, 2021. We are meeting once again on Zoom. We have with us our town manager, Scott Lambiase, and our assistant town manager and finance director, Sue Moquin. We have our recording secretary back. Deb Libby is with us on Zoom. We are very, very excited to have her back.
Thank you.
Mainly me.
Joe and I are probably the most excited because neither of us have to pay quite as much attention to taking minutes. But overall, we are all very, very glad to have her back with us. We have a relatively straightforward agenda for tonight's meeting. We are getting started on the budget process for fiscal year 22. Even though the calendar has just turned to 21, fiscal year will start on July 1st. So we're half the year through for fiscal year 21 and starting the ball rolling for fiscal year 22. We will go over our draft budget. We will check in on where we are with the budget and revenue and with free cash. In a couple of weeks, we will start up our department head meetings. I'm just double checking on my calendar. I apologize for the brief delay, but just double checking on when exactly those meetings will be starting 2 weeks from tonight on January 20th. So with that said, I think we can start in on our agenda. First item.
Now, why did you and I disappear from the screen?
I am sharing my the agenda on my screen right now, so that's it changes the format on Zoom for the people that are connected and watching when that happens.
Yeah, down below the little arrow where you can scroll through who's in here.
Yep.
Yeah, I did, and it still doesn't show me. So, or Sue.
I see you.
Sue's not on video.
Yeah, no, I see you and Sue. If there's any consolation.
So, Scott and Sue, let's start with where we are on the current fiscal year as far as both spending and revenue.
Scott, you got that one?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you want to give them the good news?
So
Yeah.
we're pretty much on target with spending. We haven't put any kind of spending freezes on anybody at this point. Local receipts are continuing to come in under budgeted. But Sonia did say that the tax revenue and motor vehicle excise tax revenue is, from what we didn't collect last year, is starting to come in now. So we're looking better where it comes to people who are having trouble with their taxes and excise and real estate because of being out of work, but it's seeming to that part of it's catching up.
Hey, Matt,
Did you guys hear that?
You?
No, I'm not. It says
sorry.
No,
I went on mute because there was shall we say activity around me in my house. So my comments to that and my responses all went heard only by me. But I said that's good to hear that some of that revenue is coming in. It's also good that the citizens of the town are actually able to make those payments now. It's a good sign. So does anyone have questions about either spending or revenue?
I guess I have a question like semi-related to revenue. At the last meeting, when the town approved the conditional additional licenses for the marijuana businesses, do we know if that person was actually awarded a license at this point?
No, so they did reach out to me, and I did get a formal letter from them through their attorney that they are looking to negotiate a community host agreement. I've actually received a couple more inquiries. Two of them are official, that one and one other, that are actually seeking to actively negotiate a community host agreement. So we're working on that. It'll be, a bit of a process. But he did seem eager as far as, I mean, you all saw him at town meeting. The other part of that is we actually haven't, although I've been out of the office a couple of days, as I know, the town meeting hasn't been certified yet. So it isn't actually official, that we don't actually have that other license to officially give out yet. So really, even my host agreement negotiations are sort of pending and based upon that future approval. And then I'll have to go through the planning board process for the special permit. So there is a way to go. He's queued up. We do hope to get that online. That'll actually, I mean, we can segue into that now or later, but there certainly will be, although we're not necessarily budgeting for that revenue yet. I've been reaching out to other towns and to try and see what sort of revenue stream we can expect to get, because we do expect at least, but probably two, at least one, but probably two, and hopefully three stores to be online in the next fiscal year. So, but it's very difficult to try and project what that revenue is going to be, because so many of them are going online throughout the area in other towns. So even though I can see what they might be making for and what kind of revenue they're getting, we can only assume it's going to diminish as more and more of these places open.
Hey, Scott,
Makes sense.
Yep.
Bazanson said it'd be millions, so maybe you could go with that estimate. He seems like he's got a pretty good factor on what's going to happen in 2021.
Well, I you know what? I certainly hope it is, but I'm going to project far less than that.
That's a smart decision, Scott.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have
I
a
need to stick around for a few more years.
we have a solid reputation, at least in the time that I've been on the committee, of projecting low and having things typically come in better than projection. I think that's probably something we should continue given the current economic times.
Can I just ask one more question, because I wasn't here last week?
No, you were late. You only get one question.
I got one a week, which is I'm sure tough on everybody's ears. I remember last year when we had said yes to these establishments, there was a rule or a law or something. The state of Massachusetts said you couldn't have more than 50%. I guess we have 6 liquor stores or 5 liquor stores, excuse me, from what I understand in Abington, and you couldn't have more than 2.5, which obviously you can have a half store. So that's where we came up with 2 weed stores. What happened to that?
No, so what we changed it to was you could do more, but it was, I think we actually had, it might be 9 liquor stores, and that's why we ended up with 50%. I think you were less than that.
Got it.
So somehow they thought that it maxed out at 2 in the way that the bylaw read. So that's what we did at town meeting, was change the bylaw to say that it would be 50% of the retail alcohol licenses, which
50% of what, Scott? I missed that.
retail alcohol licenses. So liquor stores.
Yep. So I think what had happened was like Scott said, the statute was interpreted differently when we went through it a couple of town meetings ago, and it first got approved. Because of that interpretation, they thought that the limit was going to be 2, and so that was what they put in. In this instance, they looked at it and changed the percentage specifically so that it's percentage based, and that allows it to be higher than the 2. And if we approve more liquor licenses, it will by half increase the number of retail marijuana licenses.
Got it.
Potential.
And what's
retail
the
marijuana
negotiation?
licenses.
What's the negotiation that Scott's talking about?
So the community host agreement is it's the agreement that we enter in with them that says, we expect certain amount of revenue to be shared with the town. It's really, I think when it first started and these first agreements started getting negotiated, towns were putting a lot more in there than we're actually able to now. It'll end up working out to 3% of the 3% of the gross, I believe, is what we have on the other agreements, and it would be the same. And then there's usually some sort of other percentage that would go specifically towards educational programs, or programs that would help with addiction problems and stuff like that.
Thank
But
you.
but the negotiations aren't as, they're all actually pretty cookie cutter. The community host agreement, it's called.
Less complex than it was when this first started.
Yeah, and I think that's just come out of the statute. I think the legislature or the Cannabis Control Commission put a timeout on that and said, come on, you're being unreasonable.
Any other questions regarding the current fiscal year budget and revenue?
Just one question on the current topic. So
Yeah,
where does that 50% of liquor license come from? Is that just a town mandate or a state mandate?
That's state. It's like, it's one of the section, I want to say it's like Mass General Law 138, Section 12, something to that effect, that says you can have, based on your population, how many licenses you can have for all alcohol, retail, all alcohol, drunk on premises, beer and wine, different things like that. And it's just based on population. So I think we have 16,000 plus or minus people. That works out to, you're allowed up to, say, 9 liquor stores.
And so what about the beer and wine licenses? Are those under that same mandate, or is that more
It depends. Yeah, they fall under that, but there's different sections for different things. I think that it is based on the all alcohol retail. It's not, just the beer and wine.
And so just final question, promise for clarification. It's not within the town of Abington's control. It's at the state level.
The number of alcohol licenses?
Alcohol,
Correct.
marijuana, and beer and wine.
Well, the marijuana one is based on our own bylaw, but you can't, the max or the minimum you were supposed to do was to be based on this number of alcohol licenses.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Joe, I think for clarification on that, the state provides a formula for the maximum number that you can have, or the maximum percentage, like maximum number of alcohol licenses, the maximum percentage of alcohol licenses that can have like marijuana. It's up to the individual towns what they choose to do up to or below those numbers that the state provides.
Okay.
So there are towns that say no liquor licenses whatsoever in our town, we're dry.
Yeah.
And there are towns that say we're going all the way up to whatever the maximum allowed is. So
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking is because I was always wondering why the double horse tree on Brockton Ave had a hard time getting a liquor and a beer and wine license, which they just recently got. But I would think that we would want new restaurants coming into the town to have that ability, because it's a moneymaker, right? It helps keep them open.
Yeah, and the same thing though, there's a cap on the number set by the state on the number of all, those licenses are licenses for all alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises, or a license for beer and wine to be drunk on the premises, as opposed to the retail. But yeah, there's a cap on the number of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hit or miss. Sometimes they're all gone, and one closes up, it becomes available, somebody snatches it up.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
any other revenue or budget questions? Current year. All right. I'm guessing based on our last meeting's discussion that we don't have a status on free cash certification yet. Is that correct?
We don't have,
I think we lost Sue mid-sentence.
She went through that red light.
She's working on it, is what I think she was
For
gonna say.
those watching along at home, our assistant town manager is so dedicated that she has joined this meeting while driving home. So,
Yeah.
so they cut our free cash down if we don't get the revenue in by September 30th on those particular grants. So it's like a state 911 grant and a few other things. And one of them is COVID, and that's the big kicker. It was $177,000 that we were waiting for reimbursement on as of June 30th. We got $272,000 on October 22nd. So I am presenting it to them to say, hey, these are the times we're in. Please don't hit us
Yeah.
against our free cash on that 177. So that's
Yep.
sitting with them right now to get approval. We should know within the next couple weeks.
Thanks, Sue. Considering how long it took them to get us budget numbers, I think they should
Right.
understand that.
Hmm.
Speaking of budget numbers, does anyone have any free cash questions before we move on to the draft budget for the next fiscal year? All right, without that, I will switch my share. I'll go back up to the top. And Scott or Sue, who wants to walk us through the draft budget document?
Well, yeah, I mean, so if you want to give them the rundown, I mean, I can sort of give you guys the overview here that obviously right now we have a fairly big gap and deficit in this that we're working on making up, or you know, we've gone around twice with the department heads and asked for you know, them to try and show where they can save and where they can cut. As you all recall, we cut quite a bit out of the budget last year with hopes of restoring some of it, which you know, I didn't think we would actually be able to restore it this year anyways, but certainly looking like we're gonna, you know, we're making further cuts in it. Obviously, we're making revenue projections, we, you know, based on our current, you know, revenue stream that's not good. So obviously our future projections are going to be bad also. We're, you know, at this point, we're not counting on any monies from marijuana or any of that, although we're pretty sure we are going to realize that. And we also, we're fairly certain that even though we're going to, you know, we're projecting lower revenue numbers, we're pretty certain that we'll see a good bounce back after July, certainly in the fall. I think, you know, restaurants will resurge, and you know, the meals tax will come back, and you know, a lot of those other things will come back. But yeah, overall, we got a fairly good sized gap that we have to try and make up still. And I'll let Sue enhance that if you'd like.
Do we have at least a ballpark number of what the current gap is?
Yeah, if you look on that second tab that you have there, it says, I think it says revenue on it, or it shows, I think it's 1.3 million. Yeah,
1.374.
1.3 million.
Yeah.
So with the understanding that the departments all asked for, if you look at the department request, they all asked for personnel. The school just sent me their original request number today at 5.8% over last year. And if you look at the town manager's budget, all those additional requests are cut out. And the schools departments is only a 2% increase. And with that, we're still at 1.3 in the red.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and
So
obviously.
with that, with those things in place, that's the $3 million in the red, right?
1.3.
No, I'm saying with the things that the
Oh,
town
yes,
manager
correct.
has taken out, it's a $3 million gap.
Correct.
Before we
Yep.
backed out their request.
Just trying to make sure we're that everyone looking at the document is understanding what we're seeing there.
Should we be trying to plan for like, kind of like level set there where if we do go over it, it's awesome. If we don't, it's okay.
I'm sorry, Greg, what'd you say?
Sorry, I was eating too, sorry. If we, should we be trying to plan for having a negative 1.3 million bucks?
No. So
No, we're trying to plan on getting rid of that, but
yeah,
we have to.
just to walk through for anyone new or anyone who's listening, watching this later. At this point in the budget process, we almost always have a deficit that we are able to, in most years at least, work our way through to getting the budget balanced by usually middle of this, like early to mid spring. I don't think the budget gap at this stage is usually 1.3 million, but I think there have been years, even in recent years with better economic times, where we've had somewhere around a $2 million budget gap at this stage in the process. So, and
that's what I was thinking. On my small time here, I feel like that's kind of a small gap to start with, right?
Yeah. So, Sue, you can correct us if we're wrong on that, but I think that at this point in the process, we're expecting a gap, and it's finding the ways to even that out and balance it out.
Correct. And last time that we were at a gap this large was the year that D'Agostino left in, I believe it was April, and Mr. Provost became the acting town manager, and we had a 1.3 or a $1.4 million gap at that point.
Okay.
So that was the last time it was that high.
Yep.
Yeah, and like, again, the difficult part of it is, going into last town meeting, we asked all the departments to pull out their wish list back then. We pulled a lot of, there were, as you recall, there were new positions or positions that needed to be filled. So those went unfilled, and we have another year now that obviously we won't, we're just not going to be able to fill them. And quite frankly, we're going to have to go back and look at other ways to try and save some money.
I have two questions. One, the difference between, do we just ignore the second column there?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, because the difference between that and the third column is revenue, not expenses.
I think that's part of the difference, not the whole difference.
It's the whole difference. The expense is the exact same.
The third column?
Yeah, column X.
Yeah, go back to that revenue, the top of the revenue when you first came in. I see expenses 59,143 in third column and 59,143 in the second column.
Yeah,
that is true.
So the only difference is the revenue.
Which went up.
Yeah. So I don't, I know it's a preliminary, but I just don't know what I'm looking at. That's all.
No, actually, I thank you for pointing that out. It should be different. If you look, Matt, can you put it back on the first tab?
Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. I see now.
There you go. So that is not carrying over for some reason. It's actually linked to the bottom the number at the bottom of the columns.
And
We
those
got this
numbers-
guy, we got this guy using LibreOffice. That could be the reason why.
Hey, I use what work gives me.
Oh, I know, just joking,
LibreOffice does the job.
just joking. So,
Most-
so what
most of
is the number
time,
on the,
to
on
be
the
fair,
revenue tab?
almost all of the time I'm in Google Sheets, but I
Yeah.
didn't upload this into a Google Sheet for obvious reasons.
So what's the number on the revenue tab? Does it match the managers or does it match the pre-manager?
I believe that the number
It
matches
the third
the
column.
column D.
So the third column is what we should be looking at.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
And then the other question was, did we really have at the town meeting a deficit on the warrant article of 933,000?
I'm sorry.
Of fiscal year 21,
Fiscal year
the
21.
Well,
This is-
yeah, because if you're looking at the actual numbers that came in for revenues, revenues were, they came in short by June 30th. So, because you're looking at, if you go down a little bit further on the page, Matt. So we're not looking at FY21 local receipts, we're looking at FY20 local receipts. So it's not actually what we budgeted, it was actuals at FY20 when we closed the books,
Okay.
because we can only do the following year's estimates based on what we closed.
Okay, all right. So it's not the budget that we voted on. The
No,
budget we voted on or
Right.
was
It's
balance.
not the revenue that we expected, it's the actual revenue.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. That answers that question. And that's the budget from September, not the budget from June.
This is the budget from
it's June and the
June of,
December budget together.
this is the budget from June or May or June of 19.
2020. Yeah, 2020.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I looked at the September one. The September one was a different number, but that isn't what's here. Okay.
So for 2021, when you're looking at the portion where it's actual levy and actual cherry sheets, those are actual.
Okay, yeah.
The local receipts
Yes.
are actual, not what we estimated.
Yes, but the expenses are the fiscal year 21 budget that was voted in June, not the fiscal year 21 budget that was voted in September.
Correct.
that's the one we're living with now.
Right.
Yep.
Not the one we voted in September of 2020? We're not living with that one?
We didn't vote one
September
in September.
2020, the stuff that we added to the budget is also added to these numbers. So like we gave the school an extra $456,000. That's in the school's number.
All right, so that's why I can't match it to anything that we've gotten before.
Correct.
Okay, all right, so I shouldn't try. All right, which I did. I'm sorry. It's not that simple anyway. It matches, but it's not as obvious as I hoped it would be. Okay, good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah,
Other comments? Oh, Scott, go ahead.
well, I just wanted to say, one of the, we're looking at a lot of different things in the budget, and one of the things that we're looking at is our waste collection. It's such a big part, I mean, it's oddly enough, it's $1,376,000. There's a huge chunk of our budget.
Yep.
Just in waste collection, and our the contract with Republic is going to expire at the end of the fiscal year. So between now and the end of the fiscal year, between now and June 30th, we have to go out to bid and or come up with another way, see if there's anything that we want to do different, or if there's any ways we can save money or shave down that, because as you can see, it grows. And even at that estimate, we're likely to be beyond 4.5% on growth. It's just the nature of the way it is right now.
Scott, I don't know if you've heard my interesting idea.
Scott probably hasn't heard that, Greg,
well,
because Scott's newer than the
Well,
last time.
I've heard a lot of background, and I'd love to hear everybody's idea. And actually, one thing that I've reached out to the Board of Health on Monday night, and I'll be reaching out to the selectmen this coming Monday, is what I'm trying to do is get 2 members from the Board of Health, 2 members from this Finance Committee, and 2 members from the Board of Selectmen to have a working group with me to meet a few times over the next couple of months and just to discuss different options. I like to go over what they're doing in other towns, what our options are, how we're doing it. And at the end of the day, we may change nothing, we may change everything. I don't know, but I do know that we have to come up with a new contract. And if there's something out there that we can do differently, if we could still provide the services that everybody's expecting and shave some money off of that, then now's our opportunity to figure it out. So Greg, maybe you'd love to be on that committee, because it sounds like you've got a plan. And
It's not much of a plan. It's just not recycling.
well,
And
that's the
Don't-
secret. They're not recycling anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I had
Greg's
heard that
plan
less than
is ask for a
10% of
waiver from the state and stop recycling if recycling costs more than waste removal.
right, because at some point it doesn't make sense. It started at obviously maybe you weren't here when I first said this a long time ago, but it was 0 and now it's more than trash or just equal or whatever. So like there is a point where it's like, okay, I mean, you do have to adapt to things that change, right? So if like your car all of a sudden got really expensive, you have to change your car. You know what I mean? Like you either go with a less expensive car. You don't just go get the greenest car in the world. And even if you have a really green car and there's a cheaper car and that's what you need in order to survive and get by and make the budgets that you need as a person or a town or a business, those are the decisions that sometimes you have to do. And I'm not saying to never go back to it, but if nobody can figure out a way to spend less on this because it's a monopoly and they all have the same prices, and I get all that, I just think we have to start looking at it to say, I don't know how much.
I mean, we can certainly ask, but unfortunately, I think once you get to the state level and it's at DEP, and then they're following guidance from probably the federal level, there's probably going to be a lot of issues that would prevent us from this, what we call recycling, which is just sorting our garbage out. And but there's grant money that's tied to it. We've been seeking grants to help on little things here and there with the with the transfer station or with the recycling composting station over there, and that we probably wouldn't be eligible if we weren't doing what we're supposed to do.
Well, wouldn't that just double our garbage and consumption anyway? So Craig, so
either
it's
way,
kinda-
it's going somewhere.
we're getting
Yeah, it's
charged
not
for
about
the
the
amount.
So
It's when it
Justin,
works.
for background, so I can try to quickly summarize arguments that Greg has made over about 37 meetings. Greg started arguing this when the cost per ton of recycling went higher than the cost per ton of garbage. So it was not as a way to remove the cost of recycling,
Right.
but to pay less by just putting it all in the trash instead of recycling.
Which is where it's going anyways, right?
Right.
I think a lot of it.
something like-
Yeah.
Yeah, we're no longer recycling because the whole thing that started is because China was no longer taking the recycling. So what's happening is they're taking our recycling and simply putting it in landfills, yet
Right.
we're paying more for it.
But again, we don't know where things will go over the next 5-6 months.
Correct.
I'm sure that
There's a lot of the issues with the global recycling market came about during the presidency of a certain individual who's no longer president. So or will not be president in a few weeks. So
Well, but it's about the tariffs, right? So if the tariffs are still there, it doesn't matter who the president is. He still has to
correct.
do those
However,
tariffs.
those tariffs were put in
They're
place
set
by
by
the
the president.
president
Yeah.
and
Right. Yeah. So he'd
opposed
have to
by
remove them. But
opposed by the incoming president. So
got it. Okay.
it's
Yeah, and,
entirely
and I
possible
imagine
that this could change significantly over the next year, if not sooner.
a lot of the, container ships that are dropping goods off, that are no longer going back full of recycling, maybe will be going back full of recycling in the future.
Yep.
But that being said, I do need to look at this.
Yes.
And so I would appreciate, especially because I know it could become a hot topic. It could be a hot button. I know some, that there were, I believe, overrides in the past to help put this in the levy. It's kind of interesting, on the way that other towns do it. I know in Whitman, it was outside of the levy. It wasn't a line item, and it was something that the fee was set on an annual, or is set on an annual basis by the Board of Selectmen, based on what they project the cost to be. And it's per household. There's a separate bill that's sent out for it. I know some towns do you pay for your bags. Some towns, I think it might have been Halifax that just said, we're not doing anything. It's up to, go out and find your own person to, take your
Private
trash.
companies.
Right. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be done. At the end of the day, we may just look at it and, say, hey, look, we got a slightly better deal from Republic or Waste Management or somebody else. Let's keep doing what we're doing. But where it's such a glaringly large number, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least take a look at it and talk about it.
Yeah, if you're looking for two, I would love to. I would love to join Greg if.
Great.
If
Well, I don't know. Greg didn't volunteer yet, but I
he
Scott,
did.
might.
if you want me there, I will be there.
Okay.
Hey, you have to remember Greg's on the capital planning committee and so is
Oh,
another
boy.
member. Was it Russ or Joe?
I think it
Not
was
me.
Russ. Russ
Okay,
was on.
don't stretch yourself out thin there, Greg.
All right.
I don't know
Well,
if you've seen
I'm
me
at least
lately,
throwing my name in the pot.
Okay.
Sue, I don't know if you've seen me lately, but nobody refers to me as thin.
You get the COVID-19.
No, I think people are actually saying like that might help you, Greg. You should try to lick as many handrails as you can, but I haven't done it.
I think there are some companies that do automated or self-driving garbage services. So just a thought, maybe we invest as a town in something like that, and then no longer need to rely on these other services. But
Yeah,
I guess we still have to figure out where to put the garbage, so it doesn't really solve everything. But
well, I think at the end of the day, what I expect to come out of the working group would be just some recommendations, and it may be recommendations on how we go forward. It may be, look, let's stick with Waste Management or Republic for a year, but let's try switching it up to do this. Maybe this recommendation to Finance Committee, that the Finance Committee considers taking it out of the levy and we do some sort of a rollback or whatever and set a separate fee for it. Maybe, like I said, whatever it is, we got 6 months to figure it out, and then we're going to be locked in for a year minimum. But typically on something like that, you're better deals with a 2 or 3 year contract. So
Yep.
Whatever we got to do, I think we should do it.
Yeah, I guess so. On the contract, right? What we saw last year was, we had a contract, and every time the cost of recycling went up, they just charged us more. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming the opposite is true, right? If we go into 2021, and to the general idea of this group is things change and the cost of recycling goes down, they just charge us less, right?
Well, it's typically it's tied to some sort of an escalation. And yeah, I would like to think that whatever our deal is, if all of a sudden things turn around and there's, if the tipping fee goes down on the garbage, or if the recycling, starts becoming, getting closer to a reasonable amount, or if the fee for it's dropping, then we'll realize those savings.
Yeah, so, but I guess my question is like, so the contract we saw last year was when it went up, they just charged us more. So I'm
Yeah, and
assuming,
that's,
so I'm assuming the contract goes the other way, right? If it goes down, they just charge us less.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, we just, nothing's gone down in so long now.
No, I know, but if,
But yeah, that will be a big goal.
but if in 6 months, you know, things change and all of a sudden China's like, give me all of your recycling. I'll
Mhm.
pay you double what I paid last time, right? So it should go down, right?
Yeah.
Joe, I would not,
In
just so you
theory,
know,
yes.
I would not count on it. And the only
No,
reason
Greg, I'm not saying count on it. I'm just saying, let's make sure the contract is worded in such a way that, you know, because apparently the contract in 2020 was when it goes up, we just charge you more. And that's just the way it is. Take it or
Right.
leave it. But let's make sure the contract says that if these companies are making money hands over fist because China wants all of our recycling, let's make sure the wording is such that the town recognizes that savings.
Yeah, but
Joe-
even the contract
Joe,
that
the
we
way
have
that-
now does recognize that if, you know, it's based on the tonnage fees. So if the tonnage was to go down tomorrow, we would realize a savings
Okay.
this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So
Good.
it
I
is
was
in the
gonna say,
current contract.
it does go up and down, and it has gone, at least in small amounts, down at different times during the contracts while I've been on the committee.
Okay, but that's my only point. I mean, all of a sudden we get back down to zero for recycling. We
We don't want to be stuck with the windfall for the.
Yeah,
trash.
yeah. We don't say, well, you know, you can get that zero in 2022. We don't want it to go that way.
might be the greatest point you've ever brought up, because if they usually there's a floor when people negotiate something like this, especially through a business. So we'll say it can go down, but it can only go down to this.
Yeah.
I would love for somebody or even myself to bring up to them that it could go down to zero if it's there. I assume nobody would have let that happen on their end, but if they have the ability to or not. But that's the only reason why I said I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, definitely don't count on it, but have it in the contract so we can recognize it if it does happen.
No. Agreed.
We just use all the marijuana tax revenue to pay for the garbage disposal.
Everybody wants a piece of that marijuana
Yeah, I
revenue
bet.
that we don't have
We-
yet.
Yeah, we don't even know we don't even know what's going to be, right? I
Yeah.
mean, most towns were like cashing in on big money that they never got.
Well, I've reached out to the towns that do have some up and running and to try and get some revenue numbers. And most of it, you know, it's still fairly new. So, you know, I think Rockland was seeing a couple 100,000 and maybe Hanover saw, you know, in their first quarter of payments. So, but, you know, again, as time goes on, more and more of these places are opening up and, you know, economy being the way it works, supply and demand, the more there is out there, the lower the prices are going to be, the more places you can buy it. I think that we're going to see the revenue in the beginning be great, but you know, I would just count on it continuing to drop. And then I
Gradually
would
decrease
expect,
as more competition comes up.
right. And I would expect in the very near future, especially with this new, the way the Senate and the House is going to be made up, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a federal legalization and they're ready to jump on taking some of these dollars too.
Yeah, my expectation is the opposite, right? Where, you know, similar to cigarettes, right? I mean, back in the day, you could buy a pack of cigarettes for $1. Now it's $10 because the taxes are just packed on. So even though we may have a low tax revenue in the beginning because of supply and demand, once that supply and demand is set, I would expect taxes to be increased on it.
I think they're going to be heavily increased, which
Yeah, by a lot.
there's only so much pie. There's only so much money that the people can spend, and you know.
Yeah, but people are spending $11 and $12 in a pack of cigarette, right? The money's there. So I would imagine at some point the taxes on marijuana will increase, just like it happened with cigarettes.
Yeah, but then demand will go down if that happens, if it goes too
Well,
high.
Justin, we know that's
You
not.
can't grow cigarettes in your backyard.
Justin, we know that's not true, right? Look at cigarettes, right? No matter how much you
Yeah.
raise it, no matter how
Justin
much you raise it, it's still there.
Justin made a funny on that.
Yeah, you can't grow cigarettes in your backyard, Joe. So
Not yet.
Well,
think
that's what I'm
they could, I
saying.
just
Like,
don't think
if the taxes are too high, people won't pay them. They'll just grow it themselves.
That was the idea with cigarettes, and it didn't work at all.
Yeah.
Well,
Charge
cigarette smoking
tax
is
cigarettes so much, no one wants to smoke it.
All,
Kids are still
all,
smoking cigarettes.
all the more
Oh,
reason to
the
get
numbers
the,
are down huge. I'm glad you guys brought that up again. What's up with the two guys that have the licenses already?
yeah, why aren't they running?
Because that's been
Well-
my point. That's been my point the entire time of why are we going to allow more when, again, I
So
just don't-
one of them is set to open fairly soon.
Oh, good.
They're actually in the process of the build out of the storefront.
Yep.
And the other one, there was the most recently, just some questions going back and forth regarding grandfathering of an apartment that was up on the second floor. I think they're all through permitting, but they were still in front of planning and going through this thing with the lawyers back and forth on whether or not they could actually have an apartment above the shop. I'm surprised that they're holding on tight to wanting to have somebody live above, but
So they were trying to build a new building with an apartment up front of a.
no, the second one I think is moving into some sort of an existing structure that had an apartment up above, a rental unit, and I guess they're trying to see whether you can actually have that if they're saying that it's already existing, so it's grandfathered. I think we kind of kicked it to Cannabis Control Commission on, I don't know, you even allowed to live above a pot shop? So that one, I think, so I fully expect at least those two and maybe a third one to be online, in going into the next fiscal year. If not before then, certainly in the early, into July, by July. I'd be very surprised if they're not. And since we've increased the number, I've probably gotten, like I said, I've had two, obviously the fellow at town meeting, and then I had two other inquiries since then on getting other licenses. One very specific request to go into the negotiation of a host agreement, and the other one asking the process for doing it. And then even a third one who actually wanted a place, and he was all set to, send me a draft agreement, but his storefront wasn't even in the district, it was out of the overlay district. So, and he just found that out today. So there's a lot of interest. I'm somewhat surprised, but like I said, what I'm seeing from the other towns that do have them, if you're getting a quarterly check, or even if it's an annual check for $200,000+ and that's 3% of gross, there's some money in that business.
Plenty. I forgot to ask this one question too. I know that the person who was at the meeting mentioned that they had never opened a business before. Do businesses usually take this long to open up here in Abington?
During
Marijuana
COVID?
business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it is the marijuana business. That's what that was one of my other concerns when everybody said we're going to make millions this year. I don't think that that's true. And I think it's not good to lead people in the direction that, they're thinking their taxes are going to go down next year because this particular thing is, so good.
Yeah, I can assure you that the taxes won't go down next year. I wish I could. I'd love to, if I could find a way to do it, I would, but.
Oh, but that's a lot
And
of
Greg-
what I was thinking.
Greg, let me correct that. Just because we're getting revenue from that does not make the taxes go down. The revenue from that is added to your local receipts. It does not increase or decrease your taxes.
I completely agree. I'm just telling you what I heard at town meeting.
Yeah, I could say, yeah, I mean, it does seem like they obviously were painting a rosier picture maybe.
Very.
But the revenue, yeah, the revenue would be great. We obviously need it. I mean, we're sitting on a $1.3 million gap right now. So yeah, any revenue we can get will be, but that's a kind of, that sort of revenue, even if it started coming in at $1 million, I would never count on it to be permanent. I'd be very surprised if that stayed level. I think it would, I certainly think it's going to drop and plateau somewhere lower.
And I understand that the one person, when he's asking about like making it here, could selling it, but that's the one thing I would say for people to really like. I know that we're diligent with stuff, but I don't think we've ever done anything like that where we're part of manufacturing this stuff in particular places. And again, I just remember hearing that at the meeting with what this person wants to do, this new third person wants to do with the business.
Mm. Yeah, he manufacture his big his big selling point, or for him more than us, is that he has the ability to deliver. So he's not just manufacturing and retail, but he can deliver throughout the Commonwealth or throughout a certain area. And not a lot of people are given that opportunity right now. So he's,
Yep.
and because of Economic Empowerment Act or whatever, he was given an exclusive for a certain amount of time. So that obviously bumps up his gross revenue. And so I think in the initial stages, it's great for us because 3% of gross, the more we can gross, the better it is for us. Again, I think that that window closes as other folks, whether, at some point in time, Weymouth is going to say, look, this is ridiculous that we're not realizing any of this revenue. When I was on the Board of Selectmen in Whitman, we had somebody who wanted to set up a manufacturing facility, strictly manufacturing and strictly medical. And, the town wanted nothing to do with it because of, actually, I don't even know why, because the majority of them voted in favor of legalizing it. So, but now I think they're kicking themselves sometimes because of the loss of revenue. So I think other towns are going to jump on it, and I think it's going to spread. And obviously, it'll be great for a while, but it's not the goose that's laying the golden egg.
So do we have any non-marijuana related questions about the current state of the draft budget for fiscal year 22? Anything anyone else wanted looked at right now, knowing that this is early in the process? I'll take that as a no.
Yep.
And we will say thank you to Sue and Scott for the work
And I'll
that
be
they're
in touch
doing
with
and the
Greg
work
and
that
Joe.
is yet to come. Switch my share back to.
Don't tell Dad. Don't tell.
So looking back at our agenda, do we have any liaison reports? See heads shaking all around. No liaison reports. We have no correspondence. Still not going into town hall to pick up our correspondence.
You think they're still sending it?
It's entirely possible we have copies of the Beacon piling up waiting for us.
I'll check the mail tomorrow.
I hope the Beacon isn't spending money on that. My goodness.
The Beacon comes electronically, so.
So, and then review of minutes. We do not have minutes officially ready to review yet, but we should have those for our next meeting.
You're saying the minutes I sent out didn't get there in time?
You sent them saying, "Hey, I want everyone to take a look at these and comment before we review them." So I was treating
worked
that
so
as
hard.
I was treating those as unofficial as of yet.
Okay.
We'll review those at the next one.
And can I get the minutes from the meeting, not the last meeting, the meeting before that?
Yep, that's what Joe was talking about.
Okay,
He
and I
emailed.
know, I'm pretty sure he already sent it to me, but somehow it's disappeared.
The ones from 10/28, I mean, I appreciate it, Sue, but I didn't create them. So
Okay,
I just sent them out today. I included you and Scott for a review, but hopefully they're accurate.
So you
Okay.
should have that in your email now,
okay, great.
or at
And-
least the draft version of those minutes.
This is rearview mirror, Greg again. Last week or a week before, we voted to let the town of Abington COVID test everybody or something like that. Did
I'm
someone
sorry,
take
what, Greg, you bleaked out. I
Not
missed
quite.
4 words.
COVID testing? Abington's doing COVID testing now.
Incorrect.
All right.
So what we voted for, Greg, was for money transferred from the reserve fund to a fund controlled by Sue to essentially reimburse if the CARES Act is not renewed, the fire department's doing testing in specific circumstances of town employees.
And maybe you want to put on your agenda for the next one to maybe expand that use also, because we are now starting to do vaccinations. And each vaccination is $50 to have it tested, to have it brought to the lab. So as long as we still have COVID CARES money, we will put it through Plymouth County. But if we run low, then that would be something else that we were looking at. And the vaccinations currently are for just fire and police personnel.
I just want to understand. So we're doing, excuse me, they're doing this so we don't have to go to a private company to do these things.
No. It was very specific, Greg. It
Yep.
was, should there be a large enough quantity that we would like to have a quick turnaround for town employees to get back to work, that's when Chief Nuttall would step in. If it was 1 or 2 people, he would not be stepping in.
No, it's more or less a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest with you, if it got to the point that it was that bad, we probably would have done it anyways and just come to you and said, look, we had to do this. We need the money. That's the kind of scenario. It wouldn't be,
It wouldn't be whatever it was, a Hanson or a Holbrook, where they're testing everybody in the town. It was very targeted and very specific for town employees.
Right.
Should there be a significant number, because the chief had happened to secure in a dollar figure that would have like a 12 or a 16-hour turnaround time, which is far faster than if you go to your local emergency care place.
So it really looks like it's probably a non-issue right now, Greg, for the most part. I think.
And Greg, as we mentioned before you jumped on, while you were still in the process of getting on, the spending deadline for the CARES Act was extended from December 31st of 2020 to December 31st of 2021. The money was not increased, and that's why Sue was referring to, while there's still money available to us. But the deadline was increased. Previously, anything that happened in calendar year of 2021 would not be eligible to be reimbursed. But now we do still have eligibility because of the extension of that.
Right.
Now, for a question on the vaccines, though, so what does that mean when, if I understood what you said, Sue, where it was $50 or someone to go to the lab for a vaccine? What was that about?
It's $50 to send it to the lab.
Send what to a lab?
I'm sorry, the vaccine itself. I'm confusing the two. So no, the vaccine itself, we are starting to administer, and that is also going to be going through CARES money right now, and hopefully we get more money. But if not, to maybe extend the use of that 25,000 in case we need it to vaccinate our emergency personnel.
So what you're saying is that for every vaccine that the town administers is $50-ish.
Correct.
Okay. And now,
I thought
so
they were doing
I
the
watched.
vaccinations at like Gillette Stadium and other larger areas. Is that not happening? Or is that not how they're doing the first responders?
They're doing, so some areas regionally, some are getting done. Like there is a certain amount of them that will probably go to a place like Gillette Stadium within that group. And I know we had talked initially with a few other towns about doing our own regional thing. The state was looking to see who had the capacity. But what we did is we got our supply for our first responders came right through Brockton Hospital.
Nice.
It's actually in possession now that the health director has it. So he'll be administering that, you know, through him, to our first responders.
Awesome. That's good.
Yeah, I was watching the Board of Health meeting and he was talking, Marty was talking about how they're gearing up to administer those vaccines. And so I'm just checking. So those vaccines that the Board of Health has is costing us $50 some odd per, which right now we can claim on the CARES Act. Am I hearing that right?
Correct.
But
Okay.
so isn't the federal government bought the vaccines for $19 per dose from the makers? I'm trying to figure out who we're paying $50 to, right? Like, where's that money? And it's federal grants that we're getting it from anyways. So, like, who's getting paid? That's what I don't understand.
Google.
I was not part of the actual meeting, so I just caught the tail end of the meeting, so I'm not really sure if that's the first. They have to do a series of 2 vaccines, so I'm not sure if that includes both vaccinations.
Okay. So
So-
it could be the booster dose as well.
Well, don't forget, there's also other associated costs that maybe he's factoring in on this, like the needles, the
Personnel.
Okay.
personnel, Band-Aids,
Personnel,
gowns,
Yeah.
Okay.
PPE. So
And then if we're talking about the Pfizer vaccine, I would imagine Abington has no capacity to store it at that temperature. So
Yeah.
we're paying somebody for that.
No, we actually have
We're
freezers
getting
to,
the Moderna.
to store them.
yeah, no, we actually, that's why we got some of the vaccine direct, is because we're set up to be able to handle whatever they have, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna.
They're being stored at the Brockton Hospital, though.
No, this being stored in the Board of Health Department. Well, right now they're at the school. We're trying to bring them over to the Board of Health.
We have an armed
Sub-zero
guard there,
freezers?
so if anybody's paying attention.
Yeah, so that must be Moderna because I can't believe,
Yeah.
well, that's not fair, right? I mean, I would guess that we don't have a negative, whatever it is, 70, 90 degree temperature
Yeah, those
storage
are
facility.
really expensive. Those,
Yeah,
they
they're
cost
using my
hundreds of
Yeti,
thousands.
works just like that.
Yeah, so it must be the Moderna vaccine.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did Scott just say he's using his Yeti?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, he did.
That was actually funny.
And a note from Abington Cam says the Board of Health said it is the Moderna vaccine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thanks, Matt from Abington Cam, for providing that.
Everybody waits a little while. Johnson & Johnson doesn't even need a refrigerator.
It's only 80%
Alright.
effective, though, isn't it?
We
Listen,
have,
You don't
do you have any further questions regarding meeting minutes or, hang on, where were we at? Yeah, meeting minutes, because that's what previous meetings, I guess, is what we'll post that commenting.
Other than my disappointment, I didn't get it out fast enough. I'm fine.
Our department head meetings start in 2 weeks on January 20th. Does anyone feel a need to meet next week in between now and then?
Unless there's a need for us to have a further conversation about what Sue brought up with, trying to change the allocation for that money from.
I think that's a conversation we could probably have at the tail end of that meeting.
Okay.
I don't think we need a separate meeting entirely for that. Does anyone disagree?
No.
So our next meeting will be on January 20th. Does anyone have anything else to bring up? Any other motions to make?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion to adjourn that has been seconded. Any discussion? Without any, all those in favor of adjourning? Greg, I will assume you're a yes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.